Thanks, everybody. Nancy and I are going to be talking about our journey, I guess, with inherent requirements and then informed choices. And we just thought we'd start by just highlighting some of the issues that keep coming up in the discussions in the vet sector. And the first one, which has already been mentioned a couple of times this morning, is around the competency-based training, where there's lots of prescribed tasks, actions and skills that need to be demonstrated. And do they constitute enough for inherent requirements, or do we need another set of statements? And I think that's a really big issue that we've struggled to address. The fact that most of the qualifications actually have very extensive vocational placement requirements also is a big issue and is often where the barriers occur, and I think that was also mentioned this morning, and is difficult because industry has a key part to play there in determining what's acceptable to them and then what is prescribed in the training packages. There are also some large misconceptions that vet training does not have academic requirements, and so often people advise students that that's a good option for them, and then when they get there and realise that there will be a significant academic component, that actually creates some barriers for them, and that's probably particularly true as young people with intellectual disability come through mainstream schooling. So not a good understanding at that level about advising about pathways and considerations. In South Australia, we have language literacy and numeracy admission requirements for funded training. So you must sit a whole range of assessment around your language literacy and numeracy, which also then adds another layer of requirement if you want a funded training place. For most people, a non-funded training place without a good occupational outcome is probably cost prohibitive. So there's an area that we're seeing some barriers. The vet training system itself, is so designed for particular job outcomes and industry-ready people that actually is creating a little bit of a tension between what is a training requirement and what's an industry requirement, and how do we meet both, I guess, outcomes. And then the actual idea of inherent requirements we don't think is well understood in the vet sector. Most of the research and the discussion to date has been focused on higher education, and there's not a lot of valid evidence-based research to help guide us around those things. And we thought just the other point that's worth saying is that we don't have in the vet sector additional funding for reasonable accommodations like a higher education and participation program. So the organisations themselves must fund any reasonable adjustments, which creates probably a bit of a barrier in some people's minds to reduce cost. So, if we can use those inherent requirements as a gatekeeper rather than an enabler and an empowering element of education and training, then, that's cost effective. So I thought...
So what was our approach? So we commenced trying to start developing inherent requirements with little uptake and understanding. So we decided to shift to informed choices, which was based on known issues, consideration and barriers that students were presenting with. So we believe that informed choices are imperative for all students to make their own decisions in regards to their ability to successfully participate in an educational pathway, with or without reasonable adjustments. So we created a template and an exemplar to help people develop their informed choice documents and to guide them through that development. We also hosted a range of information and training sessions to all staff to help develop an understanding of the requirements and expectations, and also the law around the informed choices. We also offered support to key people responsible to help develop them. So we actually worked with lecturing staff in relation to looking at the training package and helping them to actually develop those informed choice documents. They were then, educational managers and directors actually then reviewed them and approved them, and then it was up to the business unit to determine how and when they would be communicated. I think an informed choice is a voluntary, well-considered decision. It is the process of choosing from options based on accessible, accurate, clear and unbiased information and knowledge so that they can make a choice themselves.
And I think that going back to what's been mentioned as well, that engaging in that process actually created a lot of education for program areas or business units to understand what are they actually saying are the inherent requirements of the courses that they're teaching. And we felt that was very empowering for the academic staff or the trainers. What's in our informed choices statement? We have a template, and we first talk about industry career pathways, particularly where someone may not meet the requirements of a particular qualification but would like to stay in that area, so give them some options to consider, not just one qualification. We talk about the core skill requirements, so rather than inherent sort of requirement statement as a whole, we talk about what are the compulsory elements of it, such as having to do a particular number of hours in a vocational placement, those types of things. We talk about the language literacy and numeracy. We focus a lot on employability skills, because often it's those areas where the students focus or have barriers when they actually hit vocational placement requirements. So we talk a lot about that. We also talk about those placement requirements themselves, particularly in some areas where early starts and those types of things, may not be able to be negotiated because they're on rostered shifts, those types of things. So if there's industry-specific things, we talk about that. We also talk about what considerations they need to make about accessing their learning. So if we have a lot of online components in our courses, we talk a lot about that, what will be required, how many hours online they might need each week, what level of access to the internet they would require, those types of things to help make more practical decisions. And we talk about workplace health and safety. And then if there are industry licensing and legislation areas that they need to consider, so if it's going to be a barrier for them. In my particular area, in community services and health and lifestyle, there are, I guess, a large number of requirements around police clearances and a whole range of other things that actually may act as a barrier. So we might be able to reasonably accommodate somebody, but there may actually be another barrier to enabling them to get their qualifications.
So some people have asked the question about how and when it is communicated. So this slide actually shows you the points at which it is communicated, and I'm not going to go through them all. But I think one important thing that we were really clear about when we were developing informed choices, that they apply to all students, prospective and current. And it's actually not just about students with disabilities. So that universal design concept is really important. The informed choice statements are designed for use by students. We have career and employment service people, so external people to the organisation, information, admissions services, lecturers and students in support services, so they can talk with that with students, particularly around access plans.
And I guess just to conclude on our presentation, we've reflected a lot on have we got it right. Definitely not. It's not an exact science, and it is evolutionary. It needs to continually change and reflect changes that are occurring. But I think some of the key points for us is that initially didn't matter which kind of form or approach we took, a lot of staff wanted others to determine the inherent requirements, particularly the disability advisors or specialists in those areas, without sort of ownership about their own vocational content and courses. There was lots of gatekeeping. When we started out trying to develop this, a lot of people wanted to put up who could or couldn't come in rather than what were requirements of their courses. A lot of people didn't see it as a priority. They were happy to see it as a priority once a complaint had come or an issue had risen, but didn't want to invest initially. Those who have really developed their informed choices have really seen huge benefits now to having that document available at all points of the student life cycle. Achieving the shared understanding and agreement is an ongoing issue, and we say, as our progress has been slow. A lot of that is, that we have changing staff, we have different motivations, different changes in the organisation in terms of philosophies and priorities. So keeping that momentum going is a real challenge. And ensuring that those connections are at each point of the student life cycle, not just once at the beginning when someone's choosing to come into a course, but actually how do we use that informed choices document to review progress, to problem solve through things. We try to use it as a much more living document than just a statement at the beginning. And we have recognised in this whole process that we need to advocate more strongly around the development of inclusive language and, prescriptions in the training packages themselves. So when they're being very specific about something, we need to ask, is that actually an inherent requirement, or are they just putting it there because it's somebody's strong agenda or a particular focus? And at the end of the day, you know, for us, it's about the individual. The individual comes with a whole range of different capabilities that actually really determines a lot of whether those reasonable adjustments could be made or whether they'll be successful in their role. It's not simply the inherent requirement statement that actually hinges on their success. It's the way that I guess we interact with that individual.
And I suppose, you know, what impact is it having? Is it actually working? Well, where they've been developed and communicated and used, we're getting very positive feedback. Students have found that the information is really valuable for them because they can actually, they know what's expected and what's coming for them, and they can allow for any challenges that may be there, even with reasonable adjustments and accommodations in place. It's actually given staff the opportunity to actually discuss more confidently information around inherent requirements and reasonable adjustments. And it's also assisted in improving third-party referrals, like from disability employment providers of students coming into TAFE about what's involved within that course. And I think overall, our overall comment or closing comment is that this process is creating informed choices has probably raised more questions than answers for us, and that's why it's really important for us to be involved in the symposium today to hear what's coming from the sector across Australia. Thank you.
Thank you.